Hello guys, welcome to lesson number 62 in our series Drawing Techniques for Beginners. We're almost there now. I think we've probably got another 2 sessions and we'll see our portrait of Myla complete. We're going to concentrate on this right hand side today. We're going to bring some value out, but I went on a little bit further than we did last lesson. I spent about another hour on this, just bringing out some of the finer hairs around the muzzle. I just darkened up and started to take out some of that slight texture on the dog's nose, and it's starting to really come together. I'm really pleased with it. So without further ado, I freshened up my kneaded eraser. We're going to be using the Mono Zero eraser. There might be a little bit of 2H in there, but I think we're going to be focusing mainly on the HB, 2B and 4B today. So I will begin by just starting an initial layer of the HB. I've just given my pencils a quick whiz in the sharpener. As you will have noticed if you followed me through any of these projects, I rarely need to sharpen my pencils, and that's because the technique that we use, where we're pressing on very, very lightly. I think that along with the angle that we're holding the pencil at, those two things combined really do preserve the sharpness of your pencil, which is a fantastic thing because it saves time, but what it also does is it just saves us having to buy new pencils all the time. The pencils that I use are called Caran D'ache grafwood. You can get those from Amazon. They're the best pencil that I've used. They're quite soft, so the values that you get may be slightly darker than something like a Faber-Castell. I've used the Faber-Castell 9000 series. A great pencil. This is just the one that I sort of settled on. And I think once you've settled on a pencil, it's really important that you just stick with it, because over time you do start to get an understanding of each pencil's nuances and how they work and how they work best in certain situations. I guess it's a little bit like anything, really. If this is the first time that you visited my channel, thank you so much for watching. I'm making this series, we're on lesson 62 now, but I've been making this series for quite a while now. It's been probably the best part of 6 months, and what I wanted to do was just put a coherent set of lessons together so that people could learn some of the techniques that I've picked up over the last 3 to 4 years, where I was dotting around from technique to technique. I was paying for online courses, I was studying different types of artists' techniques, and although I've learnt an awful lot, it was sort of a little bit haywire and all over the place. And I guess unless you're very, very dedicated to the cause and it's something that you're really going to stick to, it could be a little bit chaotic for most people. So what I wanted to try and do was really start to put together a series of lessons which combine the best techniques for me. Now, I'm not saying that the techniques that we're using are the only techniques, of course not. Why would anybody say that? But what I am saying is they work the best for me, and I've gone from, what you would call a beginner to somebody that does sell and produce work for people. So I do quite a few commissions. I've actually got a couple on the go at the moment for Christmas. This picture of Myla is actually going to be for my brother. This is my brother's dog. He asked me quite a while ago if I could get around to doing it, but he doesn't actually know that we're doing this. So I think what would be lovely is once we've finished our project, if I could get as many of you to just post your final picture of Myla up in the group, which is called Tutorial Tuesdays Beginner to Pro. That's on Facebook. I can then show him all of those as well. So his dog Myla is going to be somewhat of a celebrity, and I think that would be a really nice touch. I'll maybe make a little collage of all of your work and show him. But I am going to frame this and give it to him for a Christmas present. So we've got just under a month. Well, it's not just under a month, it's 20 something days to get this complete. But like I say, I think we'll probably be done in possibly another session after this one. I'm hoping to get most of this here done and then we can final tweak next week and just show you how we're adding that background as well, which isn't going to take too long because there's not an awful lot of background. Now the technique that I'm using here for this texture on our dog's ears is what we call a tapered stroke. I'm only pulling the pencil towards me, but what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a small V shape with each of the 2 strokes that I'm making. I'm going in pairs and I'm trying to create a small V shape, and that's because having drawn lots of animals over the last few years, if you actually look at any fur under the reference image, if you carefully look at the fur, what happens most of the time is you have these very small V shapes. I'm just changing pencil now to the 2B, and I'm just going to start to bring out some of this darker value, just so that I don't lose the edge of where this, I guess it's the wrinkle in her ear. But if you actually look at your reference images, you look at those fine hairs and they do create this kind of V shape. And it's quite a realistic look. If you can get it right and not press too hard and keep building the layers up, you do end up with quite a realistic look. Now, pressing on too hard is something that I certainly struggled with in the first year or so of trying to draw realism. And I guess, having looked at some of your work over on the Facebook group, it is sometimes still an area that some of you guys and girls are struggling with a little. The way I look at it now is every pencil that I use, every stroke that I make, I'm using the exact same amount of pressure, but the value is building up because I'm layering. So I'll go over these areas again with the HB pencil in a second, still using exactly the same technique, and I'm paying attention to the direction that these hairs are lying in, and I'm not trying to be too picky and trying to draw every single strand, but I am certainly very conscious and very aware of the general direction that this hair is falling in. Now, possibly not too important on a very short-haired dog, but if you're drawing a human's head of hair, getting that direction of the hair is absolutely critical. I'm actually working on a commission at the moment for somebody for Christmas, and it's a two-faced portrait. It's of a young girl and her grandma that passed away, and they've both got very, very contrasting hairstyles, and for me that's the area that I want to really capture. Like I said when we started drawing our dog picture here, our picture of Mila, it really is the eyes that are the centerpiece. When I start looking at a reference image, and actually it's one of the things that I do when choosing a reference image, unless somebody's absolutely got their heart set on something, I do go through a few different reference images, and particularly when I'm looking for things for us to draw in the group, I look for contrasting textures. So have we got something that we're going to have a nice opportunity to create some contrast between textures. Now in this photograph here, the contrast in textures is between the eye, the textures of the nose, and then the textures of the fur. So we've got 3 very different textures there. We want to make the eye look almost like a shiny marble, and we also want to try to create that realistic hair. And then anything else, we've got these rippled effects down by the muzzle, the texture to the nose, and they all add to the sense of realism. So I'm looking for contrast in textures, I'm looking for contrast in values, just moving back to my HB now. Contrast in values, so I'm looking for some definite very dark areas. Now you can see with our portrait here, I'm guessing that this picture was done professionally because it is a professional looking portrait. You can see that they've got a light source which is coming from sort of top right, and you've got one side of the face which is in contrast to the lighter side, so this darker side here. Now when you're drawing portraits, whether it's an animal or a human, it is so important that you get the right reference image. If you've got a reference image which is lit from the front, so you've got a bright light in the front, it's very difficult, not impossible, it's very difficult to make that look realistic. And I see a lot of people grabbing reference images, maybe from Google Images or somewhere like that, and they're struggling. They find it very, very difficult to create a sense of realism. And the problem with that is, without that contrast from one side of the face to the other, it's very difficult to trick the viewer's brain into believing that what they're looking at has shape, contour, and form to it. So when you look at these professional portraits, you know, and when I mean professional portraits, I mean just somebody that's got a fairly good eye for taking a photograph. What you tend to find is they're quite often one light source, and there's some striking shadows being cast either on the face or on one side of the head. And I would guarantee you take two photographs, one with a light source in front and one with a light source off to the side somewhere, and you are always going to be able to make a realistic or a more realistic rendition with your drawing of the photograph where you've got the light source coming in from the side. If I just have a look through some of the drawings that I'm most happy with that I've done over the last few years, it is more often than not the drawings where the reference I had exactly that. It had a very strong light source which was creating some very stark contrasting shadows. And again, in my early days, I did exactly what I described to you a second ago. I would find various images off of Google Images and the internet. Quite often there would be celebrities. I was quite into drawing celebrities, and quite a lot of the images that I liked the look of were front lit. And then I would always be comparing my work to others that I'm seeing on Instagram and YouTube and things like that. And one of the things that I noticed was on the artwork that I was comparing mine to quite often, you definitely notice that the drawings that I was really in envy of had the characteristics that I've just described. They were off to the side, the light source was off to one side, there was strong shadows in there. So rather than it being an issue with my technique or my ability to render textures and value, it was more about the reference image that I was picking to draw from. So as I got my head around that and started to take my own photographs sometimes if they were of a family member or something out in nature or pictures of my dog, I made sure that I always had it on a nice bright day when there was a lot of sunlight coming in, which created those shadows. So just play around with it, but like I'm saying, it's a well-kept secret that the better the image and the more striking the shadows are on your image, the better your ability is to create realism. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you hit the subscription button, right next to that there's the notification bell. If you click that, it just tells you when a new video drops, which is at the minute I'm doing a couple a week. It would be lovely to get up to a few more, but unfortunately life gets in the way and these aren't quick videos to make But I do like to try and generally keep to the same pace as you guys. I like to continue a little bit longer once the lesson's over, just working in the areas that we've been working on together. Just using this very soft, it's a 2-inch soft brush, a makeup brush will do as well. This is the closest that you will ever see me coming to blending with anything. And again, those of you that have been with me for any amount of time now, you will know that I'm an advocate for using your pencils and not blending, not gouging the paper with a blending stump or Q-tips and things like that. I want to preserve the tooth of the paper, because being able to take away value is one of the most important aspects for me. Having these very subtle changes in value are what really give us that authentic look, realistic look. It's what makes people take a second look at your work and go, wow, is that a drawing? Is that a photograph? Is it a painting? The tooth of the paper is something we want to preserve. The more you grind down into the tooth of the paper, whether that's with your pencils, hence the reason that what we're doing is we are creating a very soft tapered stroke each time. But if I embed the graphite into the tooth of the paper with the pencil or with a blending stump or tissue paper or whatever means, an artist's chamois or something like that, what happens is you create something called graphite shine. Now, graphite shine is again something that we want to try and avoid. And it's not possible to completely avoid, even with the technique that I'm showing you. As we go through the softer pencils, the B range, the 4B, the 6B, the 7B, you know, if you went up to a 9B or something like that, it is impossible to completely avoid. However, with the harder pencils, you won't find any graphite shine in any of these lighter areas. And that's simply because I haven't damaged the tooth of the paper and I haven't flattened. And we call it burnishing, actually. And it is a technique that you do use for using coloured pencils. Really embedding the graphite down into the tooth of the paper is, like I keep reiterating, it's definitely something we want to avoid. And as you can see, I haven't sharpened the pencil again yet. I'm still on my first sharpening of the session. I'm holding the pencil quite a long way from the tip. And to start with, this is quite a difficult technique to get used to, because being quite far away from the tip feels like you have less control, which you absolutely do have less control. But what you do then get is you get this natural flow and this natural look, particularly if you're drawing hair, that you don't get if you're holding the pencil too close to the, right down here, if you're bearing down. The second thing it does is it really does allow you to get a very smooth, very soft application of graphite. It feels and looks as though what we're doing is we're just laying a very fine layer of powder almost. I'm just going to brush that over a little bit, just to move some of the graphite around. I'm going to use a little bit more 2B now. Still using that tapered stroke, making those very small V shapes. And I'm not worrying too much about closing the gap too much. If you've been with me when we've been doing any of our, we've done the baby portrait, we also did the Statue of Liberty. When we're looking at drawing skin, or in the case of the Statue of Liberty, stone, you want a very smooth transition from one value to the next. You want a very smooth and saturated coverage of value. So therefore, what you need to really concentrate on is keeping your strokes very close together, making sure there isn't a lot of the white paper showing through. But in the case of this hair on our dog, that's not something we need to be too careful of. It's one of the reasons why, if we're doing a portrait and we're drawing a face with some smooth skin on it, I actually do start with the harder pencils. So I would start with a 2H or even a 4H to begin with, to get a base layer down. You won't see me doing that when we're drawing hair or an animal, for the simple reason I don't need to have the same amount of saturation in the lower parts of the tooth of the paper, which is what happens with the harder pencil. With the harder pencil, you get much finer, much smaller particles, I guess you can call it, of graphite that come off of your pencil, and they sit in the very lowest portions of the tooth of the paper. And as you then work up through the harder pencils, you have a nice base. We call it conditioning the paper. But like I've said, we don't necessarily need that when we're drawing hair, because we want that. You know, if you look carefully at our reference image, we've got lots of white space. So just emphasising this darker patch, this darker zone here now, where we've got a little fold and something's overlapping in there. And again, I'm just creating a darker value with the 2B pencil. I'm not going in with the 4B yet. And I'm creating a point that's going inwards. We're tricking the brain of the viewer into thinking that that is a recess, that's a hole. Our brain is very accustomed to working out depths of objects by the amount of light that they are reflecting. Now, something that is very reflective, so that this front part of our dog's nose, our brain interprets that as being further forward than this area we're working on now. This area that we're working on now is further away. It's a recess, it's a hole, it's a fold of skin, it's a crease. And our brain does all of that in an instant by interpreting the light. Everything has a lighter side to it, not just the shiny object. So we're just going to move a little bit of that graphite around now. And then we're going to come in with the Mono Zero eraser, and we're just going to add a little bit of texture. So this is our Mono Zero eraser. It's a retractable mechanical eraser. They're available on Amazon and places like that. You can just get a very fine point, and using the exact same technique that we had with the hair, I'm just making these very small tapered strokes. And as you can see now, I hope you can see it in the video, the graphite's moving perfectly. It's coming off and revealing the white paper underneath. I'm not having to press on too hard. And again, you can damage the tooth of the paper with your eraser by grinding down into the paper. It becomes very easy to embed the graphite in. So I'm just lifting this graphite off with absolute ease, because I haven't already ground the graphite down into the tooth of the paper. And we've just got a little bit of texture now, just generally following the pattern of the hair. How is the hair lying? And then what we're going to do is we're going to rebrush. And what that does is it's going to take away some of the harshness of the white areas. We don't want these stark white areas. That convinces the mind that what it's looking at is something that is really reflecting the light, something shiny possibly. Now you might have the odd errant hair in there that's lighter than the rest and is really reflective, but we're going to look for those near the end. We don't need to be getting that right now, but what I'm doing is I'm just getting a general direction, a general texture, exactly the same as we have throughout the dog's face. And then we're going to rebrush. Now I would also use your brush to get rid of any pieces of rubber from your eraser. It's very easy to just swipe your hand across the page and actually end up ruining large portions of your work because you've ended up smudging or getting oil off of your hand onto the paper, which then picks up more graphite and you end up with a fingerprint on there or something like that. So try to touch your picture as little as possible. And one of the techniques that I'm not showing you right now, because I want to try and allow you to see the reference image and the drawing as well, but turn your page. You know, when I'm working on something that I'm not videoing, I've got the picture upside down, I've got it on its side. You know, I'm constantly moving the reference image, I'm moving my drawing around so that I'm always using my best stroke. I can remember when I first started drawing, getting my hand into all of these different positions and contorting my hand around, and I watched a video that was very simple. It was just about some simple techniques and the person was moving the paper around. I thought, wow, what a revelation. Which seems obvious, but to me it wasn't. I was never taught to move the paper around at school. You know, if you're writing or anything like that, you keep it in that portrait orientation. I think the second big one for me was not rushing. Don't rush. You know, I think what are we on? Possibly it's about our 8th or 9th video of drawing the dog. So I aim to keep these videos to about half an hour. I know some of them have overran into sort of the 40-minute mark. But if we've done 8 at, let's say, 35 minutes, you're talking about 4 hours plus 20 minutes. No, 40 minutes, 8 5s are 40. So you're talking about best part of 5 hours without the amount of time that we've spent in between sessions. So I would say in total that I've probably spent 10 hours so far on this portrait of Mila. Now, I've been using these techniques for a few years now, so I would say that I'm possibly a little bit quicker than maybe some of you would be, and certainly than I was at the beginning. Of course, we become more efficient and faster at things, but what I'm trying to get across there is this has taken us a long time. Every stroke is on purpose. We're not putting anything down by accident. We're not smudging and blending where we haven't got full control. We're building the value up. It would be so tempting to just get the 2B pencil and start bearing down hard now, but then we lose the realism. We lose that ability to stay in control. And it's wonderful seeing the drawing just coming to life, just emerging from the page. So turning the paper around and taking your time were two really, really valuable lessons that I hope, if you're still with me now, if you stayed on this video until now, that I hope that I've sort of conveyed that message. So I'm looking at the time now, and we're at 32 minutes, 33 minutes. I think you've got the general gist. I just want you to continue adding some more layers to this ear on the right hand side. I'm going to go in with the 2B pencil next. I'm probably going to spend another half an hour on this ear. Use your brush to brush the value in, and then just start to take some of the texture out with your Mono Zero eraser, or if you haven't got a Mono Zero eraser, you can cut a standard eraser with a pair of scissors to get a sharp edge. You can use your kneaded eraser, however you like, but just start to add some of that texture. And then next lesson, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be really just balancing the values out. We're going to be starting to use some of our black coloured pencil in some of the darker areas, and I'm just going to show you how I would go about adding some of the value into the background. But some more good progress today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications icon. I do appreciate all of your likes and shares, so if you give it a quick like, like I say, it makes a huge difference to the channel. Come and join us over on the Facebook group. We're a friendly group, and don't forget to share your work. It's fantastic seeing how some of you are getting on, and it's been nice getting to know some of you, and I'm looking forward to drawing together in the future. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hit subscribe, smack the notifications button, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.